Welcome, esteemed guests, to the Darkstone Dossiers with your host, Anthony Darkstone.
Greetings and welcome. Buonasera a tutti. Buon noite, buenas noches, bonsoir, good night, and konbanwa if you're watching in Japan, and a very good evening and a good afternoon and good morning wherever you may be on the planet. Well, thank you all for being here. Before we actually start the show proper, there is one person in the room that I would like to make a reference to, and that is a wonderful gentleman who happens to be the official photographer at the Magic Circle. He literally, in the last 24 hours, was made an associate of the Inner Magic Circle at a special presentation by the president, Megan Swan. Yes, let's give him a round of applause by all means. And that gentleman is Mr. Mark Hesketh Jennings. Some of you here will have splendid photographs that he's taken of you, myself included, at the Circle and elsewhere. And I'm indebted to him for, being here under somewhat different circumstances than usual, and supplying me with some wonderful photographs, and I hope you'll be able to do the same today, time and conditions permitting. Let's now get on with the show. Welcome to everybody, and thank you for being here, as I said. Our show today is a little bit different. As many of you who've attended previous Darkstone Dossiers will know, we've had people such as, and I've been very blessed and honored to have people such as Sean Farquhar, Kevin James, Jeff McBride, Lance Burton, Gabe Blackstone, reeling off a ton of names. We've had some wonderful people. And some of you folks may be going, well, who's Nathan Earl? Well, trust me, he is in good company, and they're in good company by having him as my guest, because this young man, I'm not being patronizing. Everybody is young, according to me, seriously. So I was just kind of really impressed with a lot of things that he did over the years. He's actually very, very experienced. And for somebody who hasn't even quite made 30 yet, just incredible. And as we will find out. So before I get to him, as is customary, we have a little clip. His major forte, and not the only one, is street magic. And he does that remarkably well at Covent Garden in the UK. If you've been there or heard about it, you understand that's a tough gig, and we will be going into some detail on that. In my opinion, as a producer and the host of this show, I have him on because he has a wealth to share with us of information. And I happen to think that he ranks alongside the likes of Jim Cellini, respect R.I.P. to Jim. I was very fortunate to spend a lot of time with him, and indeed his number one student, Eric Evans, who was also amazing. Gazzo, and you, just to give everybody a little taste, it's a compilation of just a little taste of what Nathan gets up to at his street magic. Well, I just gave you a very little taste, not just of his street magic, but some of his high-end corporate gigs that he does. So, without much further ado, uh, let me introduce you to my guest this evening, Mr. Nathan Earl.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Anthony, for having me on the show as well. Yeah, I'm not too bad, thank you. How's everything with you?
Pretty good, thank you, and even better now that you showed up, and we're going to have some serious fun.
Good.
Okay, listen. Let me just start with you. Are a relatively young man under 30, but you've got decades of experience because you kind of fell into magic almost pretty much while your mom was changing your diapers. Yes, you're pretty young, right? Is that right?
Well, I mean, actually, when I got into it properly, I was 16, really. I mean, I did a little bit as a kid, but not too much. I mean, when I got into it properly and started knuckling down and probably learning was, around the age of 16, so about 11 years ago now.
Yeah. You also joined the Young Magicians group at the Magic Circle. Is that right?
Young Magicians Club, yeah, that's it.
Well, how did that kind of, help you and make you advance on and things like that?
But actually, when I joined the Young Magicians Club, I was hanging around with a lot of like-minded people, and it kind of pushed me to be the best that I could be in a sense. Because obviously, you can learn magic from books and DVDs and everything, but really being amongst your peers, people around the similar age groups as well, and the fact that the standard there was really high as well. So, as I said, it pushed me to be the best I could be.
Well, I think at one time, like a lot of actually fairly well-known names, you also were behind the counter at Marvin Burglass's shop, Marvin's Magic. I bet that was an experience.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, a lot of magicians started out in that job as well. See, I was actually demonstrating in Harrods. I started doing it in 2015, actually, as a summer job in between university when I was studying, and then and then eventually, when I graduated, I started doing it pretty much straight for about, I think, 2 or 3 years. So yeah, great experience.
Well, I'm sure it was, because I think I'm pretty sure nobody here needs to be told who Marvin Burglass is, or his dad, David MBE, two wonderful, fine gentlemen. And at one time he was a guest, Marvin, on the Darkstone Dossiers. And a lot of people, as you said, of some repute internationally, literally started as you did behind the counter. What was your kind of experiences, in a word, demonstrating and selling magic? That's 2 words, but okay.
Well, I think, honestly, the skills that you get from doing it, being with the public day in, day out, and the fact that you're demonstrating things. And obviously, when we do magic, I think as well, to an extent, it's a sales pitch, isn't it, in a sense? I mean, not that it's all about money, but I mean, what you're doing is you are selling something to them. You're getting them to like you and who you are. So from that point of view, you get a lot of sales experience from doing it. And obviously, when you're demonstrating, you are selling. I mean, but it's also, there is an element of the whole performance as well, that you're standing there in front of, and you're performing to a different crowd every day, almost every minute. You're encountering new people every day, so you're learning lots of different things.
Where was this? Was this at the Hamleys back in Regent Street, or was it one of the other shops? Can you recall? I know Marvin has one up in Schwartz FOA in New York.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to recall where the London one was.
Yeah, I mean, he's expanded a lot globally now, I believe.
And he has.
I mean, I actually started out in Harrods. I mean, I've done a few.
Oh, right.
In Hamleys, which is a toy shop, but Harrods, the department store in Knightsbridge, the posh department store.
Well, if some of you folks don't know or heard of Harrods, as Nathan has said, this is a very posh, which is a very English word, shall we just say high-end. So it's really a very upmarket department store. Probably the only other one that you can compare it with is a very large one in Texas called Neiman Marcus, the kind of store you can walk in and buy anything, including a helicopter. And in Harrods, and I think Nathan will correct me if I'm wrong, it's the kind of store you can go in and ask for something. If they don't have it, they'll get it for you. That's how high-end it is. Yeah. Now, before we get into magic per se, everybody was affected to some degree or the other with lockdown, and of course couldn't go out and perform. You took a slightly different route with a comb and a pair of scissors. What's all that about?
Well, I learned to become a barber actually, because that was also another interest of mine I've had that I never really got the chance to pursue. But they were actually running courses in lockdown. And when I say running courses in lockdown, they did some online. They did some stuff online as well. And when some of the restrictions were a bit looser, we could still go in, and obviously there was all the measures and everything, like the social distancing and wearing a mask when you're cutting. And there was a time we couldn't cut clients' hair, so we had to cut blocks. I mean, we learned on cutting blocks anyway. Speaking of which I've got here as well.
I've noticed. I was going to ask you about that. You've got a small collection of those, haven't you?
I do, yeah. I managed to get one here in the screen.
Yeah, it looks interesting. Okay, now let's just get on to the magic per se. You, as we've covered, started with the Magic Circle, and you mentioned all the wonderful folk who've helped you, etc., in the Young Magicians Club. And you've got to the point where I think, if correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably a month or two ago you were awarded an associate of the Inner Magic Circle.
Yes, it was actually in December, so yeah, a few months ago now, and it was actually at the Christmas and Hanukkah party I put on for them. It was actually, which is the last club night of the year. It's when traditionally it is when it happens.
Right. So that's a big deal. I mean, watching here, we've got a few MMCs, a few AIMCs with silver stars like myself. And indeed, if I'm not mistaken, definitely one I know of, a member of the Inner Magic Circle with the gold star. So we will all say that to achieve an AIMC is really quite something. And you have got that not just necessarily for services to magic, but to services for the Magic Circle. Because you're quite the party animal, and you organize different things. You were saying the Hanukkah Christmas party, and you recently did the Easter party.
Yeah.
With eggs, and you were wearing rabbit ears. Oh, share some of that with us, would you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and also, I mean, obviously those are more like, they're kind of like one-off events. But what I am organizing from now on is the hands-on sessions for the Magic Circle, which are, I mean, the way I'm doing them as well is it's essentially like a workshop. So you have somebody in who's like an expert in a particular field, and you get people in the building, and then they're learning in a kind of hands-on format, really. So at the moment, we've got one at the beginning of every club night of the month, but we had to clear some exams backlog. So there's going to be the first and the third club nights of each month, hopefully from May onwards. And yeah.
Right, so you're busy organizing those. I know one of the people you've got or thinking of getting, and that's a mutual pal of ours called Brendan Rodriguez.
Yes, we had him in January.
Oh, you did already? Okay.
It was the first hands-on session that we had of the year as well. So he was doing stuff with coins and pens and rings and all that, showing us some magic that he does in his repertoire.
Yeah, I hate that guy. I really do. I mean, he's that freaking brilliant, isn't he?
Oh yeah,
it's just unbelievable, his contact juggling and things like that. What a really, really nice guy. I mean, I've hung out with him a few times, and when I lectured, he was so kind. He came and grabbed my suitcases and everything else and physically carried them up to the dressing room, to the side of the stage. There's one on the side of the stage. So he's just an amazing magician, and he's been on the cover of the Magic Circle. And if you ever get a chance to see his work, at some stage I will try and anchor him down to come on as a guest as well. I think he's a man well worth having on here. So now we come back to these events. I noticed that the Easter one, it was a pretty wretched day. I gather, cold and raining, and not many people turned up. But you were wearing bunny ears, and you had people in costumes and eggs and stuff. What went on that time? Tell us a little bit about that.
So what we had in the event, we had obviously an Easter egg hunt around the building, and I'm also Jewish as well, so it was combined Easter and Passover crackers. So we had something called an afikoman hunt around the building as well, where traditionally it's a seder, CDER, and what people do is that the youngest child traditionally goes and finds a missing piece of matzah, which is like a cracker. Essentially, they have to find that. So I thought we'd combine an Easter egg hunt and an afikoman hunt, and the person who found the afikoman, the missing piece of matzah, would trade it in for a prize. So they got a magic DVD, and it was all wrapped up. So they didn't know what it was and wrapped it. So yeah, and then we had a quiz. We also had a childhood game as well that we used to play at school. I don't know if you're familiar with the human fruit machine. Where you have three people.
No, tell us about it.
So you have three people nominated. They're blindfolded, and you have to pull out the fruits. And obviously, if you get three the same, then you get 3 sweets. If it's 2 the same, 2 sweets. One. If you only get 1 of each, then you still get a sweet anyway. So I recreated that with, we called it Magician's Fruit Machine. I mean, we had some stuff that you'd typically find under a cups and balls production. So you have obviously things like oranges, lemons, and I actually put some cups in there because it is Magician's Fruit Machine. We had 3 unequal ropes, we had some cups, we had some sponge balls as well. So we decided to make it magician themed.
That sounds like a fun evening. I saw in the pictures you had Lee Hathaway. Didn't you have also recently, I think, some friends of yours from over in the States, and they were kind of like experts on origami?
Oh, well, they're actually two separate people I think you're referring to.
Am I? Okay.
Yeah, you're referring. Yeah, they're not actually from the States. Stephen Megumi Biddle from Hastings, actually.
Okay.
And they came to the hands-on session on origami, and they're actually my childhood heroes as well, because I have 2 of their books, which they kindly autographed as well for me. They signed copies, and yeah, they came in and people were folding the paper, and they did some models, and then Steve also he performed one of his effects as well. There was an origami paper that folds into lots of different shapes as well. So he came in and did that, and his wife, his partner Megumi, so she's obviously very into origami as well. They both are, and she, so they both did the workshop together.
Well, judging by her name, I think, be correct in assuming she's Japanese, right?
That's right, yeah.
Well, she's obviously got a head start, I imagine, not being patronizing, but you know what I mean, yeah. Because the Japanese children learn that in school anyway, not to a great art form, but they learn it anyway, that I know. I think it wouldn't be right on this show if we didn't acknowledge somebody very near and dear to you who worked very hard behind the scenes on these Christmas parties and other things, and that would be your mom, right?
Yeah, absolutely. My mom, she came along, she helped with the catering and helped not just behind the scenes as well, because she was very much visible on the table.
Oh, right.
And had all the food prepared, and yeah, everyone knew who she was. So.
Well, let's go talk about supporting your son. My goodness, that's above and beyond the call of duty. Some of us here, like myself, have children. Well, my son, he's 41. Most people know they don't do magic anymore. But yeah, there was a way, obviously, you supported them. But I think this is above and beyond the call of duty, to prepare things.
It's a lot to handle on your own as well, because I think to transport the food and everything and do all that. So she helped out with both the parties, the Christmas and the Easter one.
Well, that's wonderful. Yes, we'll have to get her phone number. Now, let's talk a little bit about street magic.
Yes.
And then we'll go into how street magic applies to any other form of magic. When I say applies, the things that people like Galzo, like Jim Cellini, etc., learn in the street, and you apply it to other types of gigs. Yeah. Some of that, I think, is going to be very useful for folks watching, because to the best of my knowledge, nobody here is a street magician. I'm not. I love it. But I will quickly say this. It's okay to have a 3 or 6 month run on a cruise ship or in Vegas or Atlantic City or some other place, and you've got all your stuff there, and you do it, you turn up, 6 nights a week or whatever, and you do your thing. Because you're going to get paid, and there's people sitting in the seats. Street magic, to me, is to me, it is the toughest gig in the world. Not only are you doing magic surrounded, you have to have the skills to gather a crowd. Having done that, you've got to produce extraordinary entertainment and then get them to part with money. So to me, that's tough. You're trying to concentrate on the magic, and that's one thing. I mean, I've seen some splendid Paul DeBeck up at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival a couple of years ago. I mean, that's incredible. Jim Cellini, Eric Evans, the names I've mentioned, just stunning. You just sit there in awe, and you watch somebody like that doing, let's just say, for example, cups and balls out of a little pouch they're wearing on their stomach. And there's people 360. Now, you're either going to have to be very, 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 very good, to do that kind of thing. So talk to us a little bit about this street magician that you are. What's the psychology behind this? You go there before you start. Sorry, one thing I must say to our viewers is that you just don't turn up and put a table up. You have to get special permits and licenses, particularly where you are at, I suppose, England's premier busking, for want of another word, site, because you've got competition from other people doing other things. It's not just you there on your own. So talk to us as much as you can about all of that, what's going through your head, how you got into it, because I think we'll be fascinated to know.
Sure. I mean, where I work normally, which is the Magic Corner in Covent Garden, which is, yeah, I'd say it's quite well known. If you pop down to Covent Garden, if you go to the bottom of James Street and just pull out of the station, you go down, you find a little corner, and there's magicians there often queuing up, especially during the busy times. So we're all sitting there waiting our turns. And I mean, for years, and I mean, it still is, the way we're running this is you do turn up there. You have to be obviously a magician. I mean, we have a sort of agreement with the musicians in the area, they can work after we're finished, but it is a magician's part historically. So you turn up there, you have your equipment, and yeah, you just basically take it in turns, and you do your thing, really. I mean, unfortunately, we've had some since Westminster City Council, which is the local council, they brought in these new rules and everything with a license, and we're kind of in a sort of, what do you call it, really? We're kind of in a, yeah, we're dealing with a council at the moment, so we're basically in negotiations with them. But yeah, you have a half an hour slot to do however much you want in that time. I mean, for the most part, we all do one show in it. I mean, maybe when it's a bit quieter, you can do 2 shows back to back, but whatever you can fit in with that time.
You find what is the psychology behind this? Now, as I've said earlier, people like yourself, and at the top end of the game of street magic, you've got to not just worry about having your props there and worrying about the wind or light rain. Oh, yeah. You've got to gather a crowd. Now, what's your methodology, or can you reveal some of it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the whole point is you got to make them stop. I mean, without quoting anybody whose techniques are not mine as such, but essentially the thing is you've got to make them stop. And like you say yourself, you've got to make them stay for the duration, and obviously ultimately make them pay. So it's three things really you got to do. And there's different types of builds you can do. I mean, a lot of people like to use a bit of music to go out there and build a crowd, and obviously putting your props on, setting up, saying you're going to do something, there's going to be a show, putting it in their minds. When you've got like fast builds like that, where you obviously use music and you gather the crowd. Sometimes there's also slower builds you can use where you interact with them a bit more. You kind of build it more person by person. I think it depends on the person, depends on the character, depends on the day, depends on whatever it is you need to get at the time to do what you do. So that's the psychology behind it, and it's just basically that you've got to keep them there. You've got to keep the interest, and obviously, yeah. What you don't want essentially is when you're working on the streets. The psychology behind it is you don't want to give them a chance to leave. Really, I think that's what you're getting at, isn't it? Really.
In a way, yes. Yeah. And anything else as well. I mean, obviously the end game is, or the end objective is that, they reach into their pockets or purse and pull out, a 10 or a 20-pound note in your case. Because, and you hopefully fill your hat with that, metaphorically speaking. I mean, you might use a bag. I don't know. I can't remember.
I use personally a hat. I use a bowler hat here. Let's stick that on, actually, because I don't have enough time with that.
Now, one of the things that struck me about you, and I think some of the other older guys like myself will nod their heads and more experienced, and that is, you have created for yourself a kind of special image, which is the bowler hat. Yeah. Covent Garden, London, England, the bowler hat. So when you're doing corporate stuff, you turn up wearing that. Now, in the old days, there will be the rolled-up umbrella and the bowler hat, and people who traditionally worked in the city or somewhere nearby. Whereas you've taken that now and made that yours. The only other magician I know who's done that was a good pal of mine, Bobby Takover, who did that for some of his stage performances. So I'm thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong, people going by see you standing there wearing this bowler hat, and you've got a table and you're doing something else. So in a way, you're kind of intriguing them before you even start any magic. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're working on the streets, it's important to have an image as such. there's different types of images, and obviously there's a lot of performers that have different types of hats. I mean, the bowler hat is just, I think it's just the one that suits me out of all the hats I've tried in the past. This is the one that suits me the best. I mean, who knows in the future it might change, but I think it works really. And I like the bowler hat personally because obviously you have it on your head, and it's nice the fact you can hold it out at the end, and it's easy. You don't have to swap hats, and that's just this is what I think. But yeah, I think it's good to have an image. I think I like to look, I like to dress up, look a bit like a magician, really, so people know that I'm not just any sort of random guy in the streets trying to get attention for whatever it is, one way or another.
Good point. And I quote what you just said: "Look like a magician."
Yeah.
To which people sometimes, and I've had a lot of discussions and even workshops on this, well, what does a magician look like? Well, there was a time when everybody tried to look like Channing Pollock. There was a time when everybody kind of, wore tux. There was a time when everybody did something else. And I've always maintained that it is better to stand out a little bit and always look. I think the phrase or the cliche is always dress better than your audience. It's just good business and good stagecraft, really. Yeah. And look like you're ready to go on somewhere else afterwards. Because I don't want to get into the whole thing of my workshops, but, you don't want to show up in a pair of jeans and a torn T-shirt unless you're David Blaine. That works for him. That's his shtick, as it were, right? To do that. So I think this is a very important thing for people, even if you're not doing any kind of street magic, to establish this image of saying, hey, I look neat. My hands are clean. They're not, grubby from working under the car and that kind of thing. I mean, like all of us here, I've seen excellent street magic with the names I've mentioned, and I've also seen, shall we say, not so good street magic. There is no way in the world I would want to pull $10 or $20 bill out of my pocket and give it to this guy. It's not about the magic, is it? It's about how they perceive you. Would you say that?
Well, I think it's everything, really. I mean, obviously you've got to have your interaction as well. You've got to, everything's important. Going out there, having a nice looking table, having a nice, obviously being clean cut, because it is your job at the end of the day, and you want people to like you. So everything's important. I think it's good to have strong magic, of course, but it's not going to get you anywhere just doing tricks. That's tricks and everything, or not having any sort of interaction with the crowd or engagement with the crowd, because otherwise you're just standing there. It doesn't feel like you're engaging with them. Otherwise, it just feels like you're just doing trick after trick after trick, and it's not. And obviously one has to remember that people coming in there, they don't at all expect magic. So you've got to hook them in.
Yes, I mean, and I think probably, we've discussed or touched on, shall we say, not discussed fully, but touched on some of the difficulties as doing magic in the street. There's an added element here, particularly for you and your colleagues on the Magic Corner at Covent Garden, and that is that not everybody going through there actually understands English. So you've got to be extremely visual, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, you get some audiences where half your audience just doesn't speak a word of English. So the key things is obviously to remember. One of the things I was told, especially when you first start, is slow your speech down. You can't talk too fast. So not just being visual and making the magic strong enough, but slow your speech down. Make sure they can understand as best as they. Not everyone's going to get you. I mean, it's just like with anything, you can't please everybody. But
true. But you're basically, I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, but 50-60% of your audience are tourists.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially during tourist season. I mean, the only time we didn't really get a lot of tourists as such, probably not even any at all, was the summer of 2021. And I would like to get into that possibly, actually, because summer of 2021, even though we didn't have tourists, it was that summer, it was amazing because everyone was just in England was actually the only place where there was no COVID restrictions at the time, actually. So everyone was coming into England to see street shows, and the theatres weren't properly. It was just everybody was there to see. Everybody was just desperate to see something. So it was almost like a feeling of the Roaring Twenties, actually, in summer 2021.
Oh, wow. Have you ever thought and considered maybe of sort of going on tour in England and maybe elsewhere in Europe or the States, or are you for the moment content just to be at Covent Garden in your role as a street magician? I mean,
Not really. Do you know something? I mean, I don't think one should ever be too content in their comfort zone. I mean, what I really want to do is go up to the end of a fringe this year as well. I know I should start going to more places as well, because if you just stick to one pitch the whole time, of which I haven't just done Covent Garden. I mean, I've done the South Bank. I've been to a few different places as well. But if you just stick to one pitch, you're just going to end up just doing that. And every pitch you go to has its own battle. I mean, it's got different people, different dynamics, different kind of area. What kind of how long a time people have got, how much money, I mean, not money, but I mean, how much time have they got on their hands in a certain place? There's bigger pitches, smaller pitches, so many different variables as to wherever it is you go. So it's not good. And if you go at the end of a fringe, all I've heard is good things about it. So that people there are really appreciative. So.
Well, yeah. For my time when I went there, not to gig, just as I mean, I was gigging, but not at the fringe, somewhere else. Yes, and we just had some days off, and I went to a couple of things there. The fringe that we're referring to, for those of you who don't know, is the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which is quite famous. I mean, acts come from all over the world for that, and some of them actually pay a lot of money to be in it. So there's a lot going on, and so basically, the fringes we were discussing is a broadening. And is that something you're looking at maybe down the line somewhere for you to go there and maybe give it a try?
What I really want to do to start with, I mean, if you're going to do the, and by all means, I'm not an expert on the fringe because I've never actually done a fringe. I've never even been to the fringe itself. But obviously, you have the paid fringe and you have the free fringe. So you've got the indoor shows. But I think to start with, what I really want to do is do the street shows there, because there are a lot of pitches you can do. I mean, you've got the Royal Mile, which I'd probably just do the alcoves, which are the smaller pitches to start with, because it's probably more suitable for the kind of act that I do. And apparently you can get more shows up there, especially if you are if you're doing a magic act as opposed to like circus and juggling. Apparently you can get more shows doing it. So, I mean, I've heard there's some people that they normally work on the Royal Mile, but they actually do the smaller pitches for the fringe because they know they get more shows up there. So, but yeah, I suppose you'd have to ask them about that. But yeah, that's
this is what I've heard. As I say, my experience of street magic at the fringe was actually Paul de Beck, and the only reason I went with a pal of mine was because it was Paul, and I'd worked with him years ago, and that was a stage show. And then I've got to go see him, and it was really, really great the way that I worked the crowd, and then even more importantly, collected the money. And people might be saying, "Oh, what are you talking about money for?" And he said, "Well, yeah, that was getting paid. That you got bills to pay and food to buy, and so you need to know your craft, not just the art. You need to know your craft about getting those people there, and then getting them to go, oh yeah, great, let's just put some money in the hat." I have to talk about this, and I know I asked you to bring it along. And, I want to ask people, in fact, if they're very squeamish, to avert their eyes, because you've lost 19 fingers and 7 thumbs using this prop, I gather. You know what I'm talking about, don't you?
Well, you want to get out, or?
Yes. Oh, get it out. Yeah, you've lost 19 fingers and 7 thumbs. Get it out. Yeah, there it is.
I mean, as if by magic they reappeared.
They've reappeared. Absolutely. There you go. Now, that's a real trap, right?
Yeah, it is indeed.
What kind of a trap is it? I mean, I know a little bit about traps, but I don't know what that one is.
It's got several different names, actually. A gin trap. It's actually, I mean, its real name is a long spring dupe trap. I found out.
Okay. So what bait do you use to catch long string gin drinking dupes?
Well, I demonstrate how dangerous the traps are. I've actually got another one too. I mean, this is one of the tooth ones I've got. I should say, all credit to, I'll give a credit to this, right? I'll give a credit to Mario Morris as well as Most Dangerous Card Trick.
Oh, yeah. He's good. He's good. The name I never mentioned, but I should have done. Yes, you're right.
That's all right. I mean, Mario Morris as well as Most Dangerous Card Trick. And Mario helped me a lot as well when I first started as well. I mean, he runs something called the School of Busking. He sells quite a few magic products as well. He does, and he runs the School of Busking. There's an online course. You've got an in-person course, I believe he runs once a year in May. But yeah, Mario Morris as well as Most Dangerous Card Trick. I do it with the addition of some teeth. in my show. So I've adapted it a little bit.
I think we've got a still somewhere, and I'll ask for that shortly. But basically, what's the premise of this? Can you tell us what happens here? You get someone to choose a
absolutely.
card.
So
No, go ahead. Talk us through it. Talk us through it.
You do the classic magician's trick, where obviously you get someone to choose a playing card, shuffle it back in the pack, and find it. But you use that using an animal trap. So you place the cards in the jaws of the trap, and then you riffle through, pluck out the card, and hopefully it's their chosen one, signed one.
Ah, right. That's simple, eh?
Wow. Simple but difficult, taking everything into account. And on top of that, like you say, doing, when you're engaging with people and holding them there, and
No, I'm being facetious when I went that simple. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Sure.
Yeah. Do you want to see a chicken? Look at me. I would never try that. I've done some stupid stunts in my time, but man, that looks like, no, I don't want to do that. I really don't want to do that. Yeah, but I guess it's all about, timing and, it's the right prop and so on. I am not going to ask you, and I don't want you to talk about, if it's a prop or if it's real or whatever. That's like asking Houdini where he kept the key. So we're not going to ask that, yes. But is this, I would imagine, this is quite a crowd puller and pleaser, I would think.
Yeah,
would you
I wouldn't say it's a crowd puller. I mean, because yes and no. Because I mean, I don't get on the table kind of near the start, but what I use as a crowd puller is very different kind of techniques. Because obviously, what I do is I build the crowd first, because this is your finale. It was my finale. I mean, just like whether it be cups and balls or whether it be whatever it is you're doing, it was your finale. So it's I'll definitely say it's a crowd keeper. As I mean, I do a few warm-up tricks first, so you get them into the spirit of things. You show them a little something so they kind of get to know you, and then eventually you end with your cliffhanger, so to speak. This is the reason they come here. This is the reason why. This is the reason I've gathered them here to see.
Oh, that's a heck of a closure, I got to admit. And I would imagine that, if I'm standing in the crowd and other people are standing in the crowd and they see that as a closure, they're kind of going, oh, yeah, we definitely got to put some money in the hat, because that's a heck of a closer.
It is. I mean, you've got an element of that, and then taking into account, obviously, the other tricks I've shown them too, and then the whole engagement with the crowd and the fact that it's just the fact as well they've had a good time. So they see everything put together, and then it makes them want to obviously give.
Well, let me
not that everyone gives all the time. Obviously, you have good and bad crowds, and we'll get into that.
True. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, if you got a £10 note from everybody that was standing around, that would be great. It doesn't happen all the time, surely.
Per family, or somebody might give something or other, but yeah, it's just sometimes you find people who really get you, and for the most part, it's all going well.
Well, that's good. Now you apply some of this knowledge and experience, because you're not just doing street magic. You actually get booked for gigs, for parlor magic, walk around. I think we have a couple of stills here. Now, there you are, actually clutching the deck.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a stunning shot. I mean, it's just kind of like, whoa. And you've set your table up and it says Magic Show.
Yeah.
Do you want to say a few words about this?
Yeah, I would actually like to say a few words.
Go ahead.
Right. It's funny how you mentioned the Magic Show. Now, that table is actually Andy Hughes from the Wood Wizard has made a few tables for me actually in the past. That's one of them, and I got a newer one now. But the latest one I've got actually doesn't say Magic Show on it, and I decided not to opt for having a magic show on the second one, because you know what? As much as I like to look like a magician, after discussions with a few street performers, there's obviously different theories on this, but I think it's nice sometimes just to, if you put magic show on the front, sometimes you might scare off people who don't know they don't like magic yet, if that makes sense.
It does, actually. What an interesting concept.
You don't want them to say, people say the word magic, like, oh no, we don't like magic, we'll go. So you just say you're starting a show sometimes. You have your table there, and then you kind of win them over a little bit more. So it's, I'm giving away it's a bit of a secret, but it is a good secret, because there's all sorts of different subtleties to street performing, and what makes people want to stop, or what makes people want to, not stop.
Oh, Lord, yeah. I mean, the key word here is, different subtleties, or two key words, if you like. They're subtleties and they're different. Yeah. Let's see if we can. Sorry, go ahead, Nathan. Go ahead.
One thing, they might think another, but I think it looks, the new table I've got looks like that. It's a green top felt, but it doesn't have anything on the front. And don't get me wrong, Andy's made a really nice table. It's a really lovely sign on that. But I think going forward, I prefer not to have a sign.
No, that's a good concept. Well, that's the mark of what I would call, a true pro, because all of us, irrespective of where we are and what level of magic,
Well,
have to evolve.
Yeah, well, it's like sometimes you approach a table and everyone's got different styles of how they approach a table when they do close up. But if you say, "Would you like to see some magic?" then they go no, because we've all pretty experienced this where once in a blue moon you get a no. It's because they just don't like magic for whatever reason, or they've had a bad experience with magic, or they just don't believe in that kind of thing.
True enough, because as you say,
magic sometimes is not always the right approach necessarily.
Yeah, you're right, because in my personal and possibly professional opinion, this is just mine, and a few others share it, is that the worst thing you can do to go up to a table or when you're doing walk around, would you like to see some magic? Because you're only giving them a choice of yes or no.
Yeah, exactly. It's
yeah. Or opening the door to some smart aleck going, no, not really. I saw some magic and didn't like it. Go away. Right? And the few people who've got with him, it gives them permission to be smart alecks as well. So I think, yes, each one of us have to, consider how we approach a table or a restaurant or anywhere else, at a wedding. So you're right. Each person has that, and your skills with unknown people who've not bought a ticket or at a reception or at an event, i.e., the street, have taught you how to be able to do that. Let's see if we can get another still up there, Austin, if you'd be so kind. There you are as well. I mean, the trap is in sight.
Yes.
Some ropes, and it looks intriguing. Because if I was walking past and imagine I wasn't a magician, I would stop and kind of go, what is he doing? Yeah, it looks intriguing. Now, I assume you've obviously thought about this and thought, well, how can I make it interesting without attracting attention to it for people to go by to stop out of curiosity? Would I be right in that or not?
Yeah, I mean, in this particular clip, you can see me holding a poker chip, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I do is I make a poker chip float. It's basically it's a bit of close-up magic essentially, because typically at that point the audience is a bit smaller. Sometimes you get an instant crowd, but it's essentially it's a little trick just to warm them up, really, and then it gets them clapping a little bit. And
interesting. Let's see if we can get another one up.
Yes.
I particularly wanted to pull this one up. I'm going to tell you why, and then let you please respond. Obviously, if you look at this, yes, judging by the people, this is a high-end event. Right? The guys wearing tails, and the ladies are dressed in evening dresses. The place itself looks high-end. There's a leather Chesterfield, some nice paintings on the wall. I think if I can make it out, it's Churchill. So it gives you an indication of the ambiance, the atmosphere, if you will, of the place. And there you are, equally dressed, not like them, but saying, hey, here I am, and this is what I'm doing. And this is where a lot of your experience, even though you're under 30, as I mentioned before, and I'm not being patronizing, I'm just saying, you've got a wealth of experience that magicians who've been in magic for double the time haven't even had half. So I know what you're doing here, but talk us through this and how you approach this high end, because I know you do a lot of those corporate high end things as well.
Well, I mean, I do actually in some private parties, some corporate events, and all that as well. I mean, in this case, I think the key is when you work on the streets. If you can work on the streets, then to an extent you can work anywhere really, because you have those skills. You get the confidence to approach a table, and you have the confidence to approach a group, and obviously engage them, and that's pretty much what this is. So it's just, I call this obviously like a reaction shot of me in action actually doing an event. And yeah, I wouldn't say I dress quite that smart on the streets, because obviously you don't want your clothes to get too tatty, but obviously I dress up enough. But this is like actual dinner wear. Obviously you've got a suit, a tie, and obviously fresh bowler hat all the time.
Yeah. So yeah, I think you've made some interesting comments here, which is, I mean, to use a hackneyed phrase, but an important one in our performing art of magic, is audience management. Yeah. And the street teaches you that, because truthfully, I think there's a lot of people who've been in the business as long as I have would agree with this. I know they do because we talk about it. It doesn't matter if you chop your head off, kick it around, and then put it back on. If you don't know how to do the most basic of audience management, then, to use a cliche, you're dead in the water. Would you agree?
Well, yeah, pretty much so. I mean, well,
Yeah.
especially, yeah, I mean, obviously on the streets as well, you have to, going back to that, you have to keep them there, really. But yeah, and then once you learn that, yeah, you can apply it. It does become like it becomes a lot easier to do an event or a gig once you know that.
Yeah. So, as I say, this is an important element where I wanted to, let our viewers know that there is not so much a transition or a transformation, but a using of one skill to actually help another, which is obviously indoors. The crowd is already there. They know they're going to have some entertainment, and they're there to see something. And obviously, the choice of material in a venue like this is very important. Would you say?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to. Obviously, there's certain tricks are appropriate, like doing the whole. Let's put it this way: doing the whole sponge ding dong is not appropriate for.
No.
Not
Well,
by everybody.
I personally never found that appropriate.
No, exactly, especially
I think it's unnecessary. I think the word is, you're just a hack trickster. You're not a magician. So, what I was getting at here is that when you do an event, a gig of this nature, you can't just do, your best stage show or whatever, right? I mean, you wouldn't use the trap here because I would imagine this is not right for using the trap.
No, because I mean, the trap is never something I do for walk around anyway. I mean,
No.
if they had me on
Yeah.
stage doing something, then by all means I would. But obviously, this is close up walk around magic, so I wouldn't be using the trap.
That's what I meant. So you would carry something that you would work from your pockets, like for those who know immediately will nod and go, the Professor's Nightmare. Yeah.
Yeah, as you can see in the picture. Yeah, and also do things like billing kiwi and things like other things too. Some card magic and sponge balls.
Things that you can, what I would call that are movable and easy. Yeah, easy in the sense of they have a sequence and a flow. I mean, what I particularly like about this, and I noticed it when I first got this picture, was, oh wow, look, his ropes are yellow.
Yeah, that's a I actually quote here as well. My colleague actually who works in Covent Garden. I mean, he told me, I can't remember who he told me it from, but there's a magician called Andy Prince who works in Covent Garden. He was giving me he was telling me all about yellow rope. I asked him in his street show once, well, how come you use yellow rope? And he said, because of the visual aspect of it.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
And I agree, to be honest with you. I'd use yellow.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, it's very important. It just brings me to mind of something. Back in the day when Noah built the Ark, when we were at Magic at the Red Sea, and the very first one I had Max Maven, I did a talk show with him, and one of the things he talked about, well, blessings for his memory, he said, if you're doing stuff on the stage or parlor, use like a 2 of diamonds or a 3 of spades or something like that. People at the very back, they can see it. And this is part of audience management. Sorry, you were going to say, go ahead.
I was going to say as well, like with the trap, I really like it when they choose a red card, because if you have like a 2 of diamonds or a 2 of hearts, they can draw a smiley face on it, and it's more visual. It's a bit harder if you've got like a king of spades and find the top. So,
to be quite honest, and I think you more than likely agree with me on this, because you've probably handed out more cards to be chosen than most of us sitting here. I mean, we've all done it, but you have, because of the number of times you're doing it. You've got people who may not recognize a card. Where, for example, if it's a Jack of Diamonds or something, yes, they don't know what it is. But if you're pulling out a 2 of diamonds and they don't know it's a 2 of diamonds, it's a much easier visual retention, would you say?
Yeah, especially once it's signed one way or another with a smiley face. Or, because I get a kid to sign it. So.
Okay, well, that's good. All righty. Well, I don't know if we've got a couple of other stills of you there. Austin will pull them up. Let's see. I love this shot. I have no idea what you're doing here. Tell us.
I think I was just hyping the audience up, and lesson to be learned: when you see my laptop projector stand over there, I use it as a table now than that. So, and also my case is a bit more decorated, because that projector stand actually was designed to fit in I got it with a side attachment separately. put it together, fitted inside the box as well. So it was more, it was more portable with that, but for the sake of having a nicer table, I think it's more worth carrying it around in an extra padded bag because, as I was saying earlier, it's everything, isn't it? So yeah, I must have been hyping the audience up, and that was actually before lockdown. I didn't have quite as much of a beard now, so yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great shot, and I think a lot of people would agree. And I like the fact that you got the opera house in the background.
I remember looking back and I was thinking, yeah, I wasn't experienced as experienced on the streets back then as I am now, as would be obviously because I think it's about 3 years ago now. So I remember exactly that time it was and what I was doing at the time is very different to when I wasn't doing a Rubik's Cube solve at that point. I just brings back a lot of memories.
Well, I think it's pretty relevant if many of us here have been in business for a goodly while and are very observant. And if we look at this picture and for a moment not pay too much attention to you, but look at all those people and the expression on their faces, even though you've got your back to them, for some reason they're intrigued and not deciding to move away. The guy with the glasses on the left is kind of, I wonder what's going on here. The girl next to him in the, red and black jacket, and the young girl in the yellow anorak, and people, standing there. So I think this is really, quite a skill to be able to get, folks that interested.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard sometimes to tell what they're thinking from that photo onwards. I mean, I think there's more some looks of bewilderment actually, but who knows what was going through their minds at the time? Eh?
Well, exactly. As long as they stop, that's the important thing.
The back, I mean, sometimes I find with the back row, I mean, unless your show is like 360, the back sometimes, I mean, I'm more worried about the people who I'm facing. Excuse me. I mean, yeah, I'm more worried about the people in the front row and the sides. But I mean, sometimes the back can be nice, but it depends on the show, really.
Yeah. Let's see if we've got. I can't remember if we have another one or two up there. Austin will help us out, I'm sure, our Zoom-meister.
Oh, yes.
Now, again, I particularly wanted to include this because if you look very closely, we'll recognize you because you're the guy with the bowler hat, right? That's impressive, right? That's impressive. The magicians who go, well, I just do close-up and small parlor shows to 50 or 60 people. Okay, great, nothing wrong with that. But, you've got these people 3-4 deep and they're 360.
Yeah, that was a nice big crowd, actually, from the shots.
Yeah, I mean, so skills to you for getting that all together. And they're standing up. I mean, they're not sitting down. Nobody is serving them drinks, right?
No, I mean, it's interesting enough.
Go ahead.
When it's summertime, you sometimes get the kids sitting down on the floor. They just kind of park themselves down. That's fine as well. I mean, there's some performers that actually make an effort to get the kids sitting down on the floor as well. I mean, but yeah, sometimes they just sit down anyway. But yeah, as for them standing, yeah, that's exactly what they do.
I wanted this picture in the show because that shows the level of skill that you have. It really does. I'm not really interested in people, watching you do, Sponge Walls of the Professor's Nightmare. Pretty much most of us, to varying degrees, do it. So that's not what this was about. This was about having you on was these other skills, which many of us just simply don't have. It doesn't matter how long we've been in the business. We just don't have them. I mean, it doesn't matter what you do. You can put a gun to my head and say, okay, go out there in the middle of something and draw a crowd. And I'd have to wing it, and I don't know how good I'd be at it. I'd probably flop. So, kudos to you. Do we have one more, Austin? I love this shot as well, because this shot, let me borrow some words from a good buddy of mine in New Orleans, John Rockerbomber. Most of us here would have heard of him. An article I wrote on him, and I hung out with John, and he said, when you're doing magic, you have to understand there's a fourth wall, like theater. You either bring it down or pull it up. And I use that in my workshop. He also went on to say, you have to woo people almost like a lover and make them love in some manner what you love. And I think this picture of you, this photograph, exudes that. It's actually saying to people, look at me, I'm loving this, I'm enjoying it, come join me. Would you agree with my analysis?
Yeah, I think, I think as long as we look like we're having fun, then the audience will have fun for the most part as well. I remember this was actually footage from a charity show we did because sometimes there's a street performers association. This is not from the Magic Corner. This is from the West Piazza, which is the main pitch by the church in Covent Garden, where they do all the circus and juggling.
Oh, right.
I think I did like a 2-minute slot there, and I just said, well, I'll just do the Rubik's Cube solve.
Wow. But, it's a great shot, which is why I kind of picked that and got into our Zoom Meister to say, because I wanted to talk about that, that particular element, which we just did. Now, I'm looking at the clock, and as most people who've attended this, the Darkstone Dossiers know, that we come to a point in the show where we go to what's known in Vegas as meet and greet, where people can put their mics on and talk directly to you. They're a bit nervous, some folks are. They just put something in chat and I read it out. So before we get to that point, a couple of things. Is there anything that you want to talk about or mention at this point? Put you on the spot. I'm sorry, you don't have to, but if there is, go ahead.
Where would I start, really? I mean, there's in terms of specifics. I mean, everything I'm saying is pretty much just on the fly, really. I mean, it's just.
Oh, like yeah, this is not a scripted show. I wouldn't dream of having it formatted, yes, but not scripted ever.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I just meant anything specific, that you said, yeah, I wanted to mention this. If you don't have it, that's okay. I mean,
not off the top of my head, to be honest. I mean, I'd rather, when we get to the meet and greet, people can ask me and I'll.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds like a plan. Yeah, let's do that. So before we head over to the meet and greet, let me just say a huge thank you to everybody that attended. Thank you very much. A huge thank you to people who rode shotgun manning the gallery. And we always had that, make sure. In fancy terms, we call them high-end security, but now they're riding shotgun to throw out naughty people. It doesn't happen, but sometimes, occasionally on Zoom, it does. So thank you to them. Thank you very much to Austin Moody, who is our Zoom master. And thank you very much to a couple of other very, very dear pals who've shown up here. Some of them, in fact, are members of the board of the Association de Magiciens Internationaux, which is where the show is going out. You saw the logo in the front. They're from the board, and they actually came here, and that was really cool. So thank you to them. And I think, well, as John Rockebaum says, those are the end words. So if we can maybe just open up your mics, etc. And as I said before, if you want to put something in chat, go ahead. And you feel you don't want to go on camera. I mean, some people just don't. No, that's okay. I understand that. And so feel free to, chat directly with Nathan. I think you'll agree with me to thank your mom, Michelle, right?
Yeah, absolutely, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Switch your mics on and feel free to chat directly with Nathan.
Hello, Nathan. It's John O'Riordan here.
Hello there.
And it's very interesting tonight for your experience on the street magic and performing certainly in Covent Garden. It must be a real pleasure because it's always part of history, part of tradition. A question I'd like to ask you, do you get any people try to play with your props or take your props at any time?
It can happen once in a blue moon, but I mean, one thing's important to keep under control. And I'll tell you something, the table that I've got now has actually got a little section at the back which you can store some stuff in. And at one point I was just leaving a Rubik's Cube on the table, and then, never leave your props lying around once you've come off the pitch. Put that in, put your props away as much as you can, because especially the trap as well. Me leaving that on the table is a bit people I don't want people touching it, and so yeah.
Oh, thanks very much indeed.
That's all right.
Hello.
Hey, Brian. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, I'm fine. How are you?
Good. All right, thanks. Good to see you. Thank you for making. You just finished 2 mega shows today, didn't you? I know.
Well, no, not mega, but I mean 2 shows. That's more than enough for today. Tired. And plus what I had the rest of the week, so
right.
Exhausted. So I actually saw a little bit of Nathan performing at Covent Garden, last May. Actually, it was in London. So that was fun watching. I wouldn't say I've done, like street magic the way that Nathan does or busking like that, but I mean, I've had the experience of performing in the street, but never collecting money. So I think that really takes a lot of I wouldn't say guts, but I mean it takes a clever mind, able to capture the audience, as you said, and to have them to give you money, because at the end of the day, it's like your bread and butter, Nathan. So well done on that.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you so much for a nice evening as well. Well done, Nathan.
Hi, Anthony. It's Michael Kelly. It was really interesting to listen to, particularly the audience management when you're dealing with a crowd who haven't paid for a ticket to be there. They're just passing by. You know, they haven't opted in, and yet you still have to engage them, keep them interested, and then get them to pay at the end instead of the beginning. It's so it's quite extraordinary, but it really does go to show as well how important some of the other skills are that a magician needs, which aren't simply handling cards or doing a trick. You have to keep people engaged. You have to be able to project charisma. You have to be able to connect with them on an emotional basis and give them a real experience. And this must be one of the most challenging arenas to do that in, because, as I say, they haven't bought into it in advance. You're having to start reeling them in from the very start. So, you know, enormous respect for that, Nathan. I like my cozy little parlor shows where everyone's paid in advance and they're already coming and knowing what to expect. But, you know, these are such important skills to develop for every magician, because we all need that level of audience management, whether you're on the street or not. So it's great to see that, and you can see it in the photographs and the videos. You can see it in action, and it's wonderful.
Hi, Nathan. Cole Blackbell here.
Hello there.
And pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for spending time. What I'd say, what's your biggest influence outside of magic?
Oh, hard to say, really. I mean, there's biggest. I mean, with regards to magic as such. I mean, I know it's outside of magic. I mean,
yeah, in regards to your profession, where do you take your influence from outside of magic? I would say, or do you have any?
I mean, I guess you could say I was always into kind of performance, really, as such.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, I did do some drama schools. I mean, it's like some Saturday drama schools and some summer drama schools as well in the past. But that was not. I mean, I actually went on to do a classics degree. So the real reason why I ended up doing the street performing as well is because, I mean, I had a look. I was doing Marvin's Magic, and then eventually I wanted to kind of go more into the real world and start doing more, you know, more self-employed magic work. So I looked up, see what it took to actually busk. And at the time, they said you can busk in London pretty much. You don't need a license, and that's what got me into the street magic as such, really. So aside from that, hard to say.
Excellent. Well, yeah, I can definitely see how acting could plays a big part into it. I mean, it's my opinion that I'd say every major performance art can provide something to all the others. I mean, it's not just magic. Or, I mean, if you take dancing choreography, I mean, you're going to get your timing, you're going to get your movement, you're going to get your grace. Acting, you're going to get your oration, you're going to get, you know, I mean, audience management's going to play a big part in a lot of those as well. I mean, even with music and fingering and instrumentation, you're going to build your finger agility.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, when I first started street performing, I was advised to do some Toastmaster sessions, of which I did join a Toastmasters club, but then unfortunately the club closed down, the particular local club. There's a few of them, but I never got around to renewing it. But then that was at the time when I started to improve as a street performer as well. So it was good to do the sessions and see what it's all about. And they do teach you a lot about timing and being able to a lot of public speaking. I
think basically, if we have nothing more, we can call it a wrap. Is that okay? Any last thoughts spring to mind to anybody? So if you want to unmute yourselves and give Nathan a nice round of applause, that would be cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you again to Anthony and all of you for coming and asking questions and listening in and seeing what it's all about.
Absolute pleasure. And on behalf of everybody, thanks to you for, you know, your thoughts and sharing, I think, which is nice. And that's mainly why I have done for 3 years now, almost 4, the Darkstone Dossiers, because all the wonderful people who've been on and sharing. Next month on the 20th, and I will be sending out information on it, is none other than Professor Dr. Todd Landman. He's on the 20th, and I'll be getting some information out.
Well, as I said before, I mean, I think if you get a chance to come down to London, come to Covent Garden, to the Magic Corner, and you'll either see me on the pitch or queuing up behind it. And I guess that's the way you can really, because you can see some clips on YouTube, or you can see some footage, and you can see some stills. But if you can come down and really experience the magic, you can really see what it's all about. Obviously, you can see the crowd build, and then you can see it. And then, don't forget to leave a tip.
Okay.
We all appreciate it. We all appreciate something in our hat at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you all. Pleasure to have you all here. Well, thank you very much indeed. And I think
thank you, Anthony. Thank you.
Oh, great pleasure, John. Take it easy, and thank you to everybody for everything.